Press. I'm also a candidate for Congress for the Green Party in the 3rd District. And there's tremendous concerns that have been raised in our newspaper, particularly about these brand new experimental software patches. And we'll speak a little more about that later, but we believe they're illegal and need to be removed. And we have in fact contacted the FBI, is that all software must, under Ohio and federal law, be tested and certified. And a woman with tremendous concern over the issue of voters' rights, whether it be the voter suppression now running wild in the state of Ohio, where 1.1 million voters were purged since the last election, and many of them have not been restored, and the numerous glitches that are occurring throughout the state. And now we have the Republicans complaining that the machines are flipping, and their attorneys are asking for recalibration in 9 states. So in the midst of a failed and breaking election system, I give you Jill Stein, the Green Party presidential candidate.
Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for standing up for election integrity, for our democracy, which is so very much under threat, more than under threat, under lockdown, I think you could say. Having been locked down myself to a chair for 8 hours after daring to show up at the second debate and insist that American voters had a right to actually hear about the candidates that were on their ballot, and had a right to hear about the very serious and desperate problems we're facing and the solutions that could actually solve those problems. If we can't talk about them, how can we have a meaningful vote about them if voters are not informed? And now we see our democracy under threat as well, again, by how we vote, by the suppression of the vote, by the voter ID laws all over this country. And although the requirement for a photo ID has been at least deferred here in Ohio, there is still much confusion about which IDs are applicable. We know that, as Bob said, about 1 million voters were actually purged over the last several years, so many people will be turned away from the polls. We know that early voting has been repressed here as well by the Secretary of State. And now we hear, in addition, that some untested, unregulated software, a patch, has been added to the ES&S machines, to the optical scanners, which actually count the vast majority of the vote here. So this is extremely worrisome and appears to be in violation of state and federal election law. So we're very concerned and very supportive of the election law attorneys who are asking the FBI, and perhaps ought to be asking the Department of Justice as well, to look into the potential violation of federal and state law here. Because we have 2 recent elections that have been apparently stolen, and we should not let that happen again without standing up in advance to prevent it. That means investigating this software. It also means investigating the role that the Romney family has, their conflict of interest, their substantial financial interest in those voting machines, which are readily tampered with, for which there really is no reliable security. And to know that we are heading into an election where the 2 previous elections have been stolen. Here we're heading into the 3rd, knowing that we have suspicious software that has been mysteriously added, as well as a vested interest on behalf of one of the candidates, where that vested interest corresponds with the Republican control over this election. So it's very important that we be standing up now and shining the light of transparency and scrutiny on this disaster before it happens, that we're not just looking into it after the fact. And another very important concern is that the election commissions actually destroyed the paper trail. 55 out of 88 counties actually destroyed the paper trail so that no actual recount could be done, or no audit could be done in the last election.
2004.
In 2004, I'm sorry. So it's very important that election officials be reminded of their federal responsibility and their state responsibility not to purposefully destroy the evidence of the election. And we will be watching very carefully and trust that the American public and the American press will also be watching very carefully, so that we can begin to repair our democracy and have at least a reliable vote count. While the election has been rigged in so many other ways, with the denial of a voice to independent candidates, the denial of ballot status, and the requirement for all sorts of hoops to be jumped through in order for independent voices to gain ballot access, with the unbelievable, outrageous role that money is playing in this election, with the PACs and the super PACs and the dark money flowing into this election in unprecedented numbers, controlling the public discussion and the TV advertising that has poured in like never before. So this election has been systemically corrupted like never before. But it's important that we stand up at every step of the way to demand election integrity and to demand that the voters of this country have a meaningful vote, as meaningful as possible at every step. So thank you all so much for being here. I want to now turn this over. Thank you. I want to turn it over to Cheri Honkala, my running mate, my vice presidential running mate, to make a few comments as well. Thank you, Cheri.
It's, it's always good to be here in Ohio, but it's too bad it's under these circumstances once again. And coming from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, boy, am I familiar with fraud. And I'm also familiar about being a part of the disenfranchised, of living in a poor community, of being surrounded by not just low-income folks, but many different folks of color. And now we've had to deal with ridiculous things like, trying to bring back the poll tax. What kind of country do we live in? What kind of country has ridiculous things like the vote, the true the vote, where you have this group of white guys coming around in African American communities to make sure that people of color are not engaging in fraudulent activities? We need international observers in this country, in wealthy communities, observing what the hell is going on in our country. The absolute lack of transparency, no auditing system, the history of fraud in this state, and the partisanship. Something is really wrong in America. Jill and I, we fought to try and bring debates to the American people for third parties, and we ended up going to jail instead for that. Well, we are here today to say that we are going to stand here and we're going to fight this thing to the end to ensure that we put an end to voter suppression, and that all of us should uplift our voice and ensure that everybody begins to demand that we have paper ballots in this country. Why can't we bring back the days where we've got people standing there and we've got the paper right there and it's very clear who the hell I'm voting for? When you don't have much in this country, the last thing that you have is your voice. We cannot afford to let them take away our voice. We owe it to our ancestors to ensure that we have a voting system in this country that validates and uplifts and counts every single human being. Thank you very much.
And are there any questions for Jill Stein or Cheri Honkala? Questions from the media?
Yes, I do. Given that the procedure for recounting the vote on the electronic machines in Ohio is simply to run the memory cards from each of the machines back to the same tabulators that they were run through initially, what exactly would be the value of a recount in Ohio?
That's exactly the point. Why we need the paper trail, why we need to be sure that the local boards of election are not destroying or tampering with the hard paper trail. Exactly. Recounting the digital trail is no recount at all, because whatever tampering takes place will be taking place at the digital level. So the recount or audit, whatever, must happen with the reliable paper trail.
But given that that's not the technology...
The Green Party is actually calling for the FBI to bring in computer forensic cyber sleuth to break down and see what's on the electronic audit trail. We think it is the position of the Green Party, if there is election tampering, if the exit polls are outside the margin of error, that those areas should be treated as a crime scene, and computer forensic experts should come in and rip those machines apart.
And does the Green Party have the resources on the ground to raise the funds necessary for a recount, as well as backup servers?
If we have another stolen election, if we have another election that would be considered fraud by international standards, as we did in 2000, really in Florida, 2004 in Ohio, the resources will come from the people, and the Green Party believes that the people will raise the money, because we're sick of people saying that the universal laws of statistics apply everywhere on planet Earth except in Florida and Ohio.